Good evening. I'd like to call to order the July 25th Planning Board meeting. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from July 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of minutes of July 11, 2017, including the comments made by Mr. Leary.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Next is public comment. If anyone has anything to bring up to the planning board that's not on our agenda tonight, you're welcome to take the microphone for a couple of minutes. Hearing none, moving on. The next one is approval not required. This is an applicant is CLSV Limited Partnership revised the lot lanes for lot 19 and 20, 19A and 20A Highland Plains Road, Holmes McGrath. Does anyone on our board need more time to look at this plan? Motion to endorse.
I'll move to endorse. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Next. Okay, this is a planning board discussion. Applicant Joseph Buccino to modify a definitive plan.
Point of order, your agenda should be public hearing.
Okay, I thought it was a hearing. It said, I just read was on the agenda.
You're well trained.
Okay.
Yeah. Notices.
Notices. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was notices published on July 7th, July 14th, July 21st for this project, and 11 abutters were notified by certified mail.
Okay, request here, the hearing is to reduce the 3 existing lots and roadway, hiking way, to 1 lot, Cape and Islands Engineering. For the applicant,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney here in town. I suppose I have a quick question for you, sir, and that's that these 2 applications are very much joint in a sense. So I don't know if you want me to handle them both together or simply the merger issue first and then proceed to the...
in order, please.
Okay. So the first application before you tonight is brought to you by Mr. Joseph Bush. I always get Bushanio. I always have a little bit of a struggle with this one. I have to apologize. What we're seeking to do is to merge lots 3A, 4, and 5 on Hiken Way, along with the roadway laid out as Hiken Way, into 1 lot. This project was brought before you as a definitive plan decision some years ago and was approved. The resulting remerger of the lots will end up with 1 lot that meets all of your requirements. It will be 4.1 acres where 45,000 square feet is required for lot size. It will have frontage of 110 feet or so where 100 is required, and it will have a lot width of approximately 376 feet where a width of 150 feet is required. Basically everything else I have to say really lends itself to the second application, so I don't think I have much more to say about the simple merger of the lots, the change of the definitive plan decision.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah. Would you discuss the minimum lot size, please?
Sure, the minimum lot size is 45,000 square feet. The resulting lot after the merger of this is 4.1 acres, which is well in excess of 45,000 square feet.
I thought the one was 5 acres.
No, minimum lot size for a contractor's yard is 5 acres in an agricultural AA. In an agricultural A, it's a 3 acre requirement.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Have we all heard enough on this issue?
On this issue, I think.
Public comment? Yes, sir? Please come up and address us, identify yourself.
My name is Mark Franciosi. I reside at 385 Old Meeting House Road. Built a new house there about 3.5 years. My concern here is when I made a financial investment in a new house, substantial, not to mention the area, open land, nice and quiet, and now I'm looking at this. Does this make sense in a residential
Mark.
area?
I think you're premature. We are talking about simply merging these lots together, and that's the only thing on this item. We have another item that you probably want to address right after we finish this.
Okay, but in the case of merging lots, what is the intent of merging these three lots?
They have the right to do it. The intent will be obvious on the next issue.
Okay, so
And that's a special permit,
yeah,
and there's a whole different set of rules, and you'll be back.
I guess I'll be back, thanks.
Okay.
Just to clarify what the board and the public, if you want me to clarify the procedure.
Go ahead, please.
So the board is hearing this application under the subdivision control law. Subdivision control law is all about laying out of streets and the plotting of lots. It's the creation of subdivisions. They'll be hearing a special permit application under the Zoning Act for a contractor job. That'll be the second public hearing. But what's in front of the board right now is simply a subdivision plan, essentially being put in reverse under the subdivision control law. Criteria are wholly different. My sense is that the public that's here tonight is here for our contractor zoning permit. So I think perhaps we can go through this process for subdivision control, then turn your attention to the public hearing on the special permit. But essentially as a procedural matter. Okay?
So we're just undoing something that was already done. They've asked, previous boards gave them a definitive plan.
You're contemplating the application.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyone else for the public on just what we see right here, the combining of these three lots into one is the topic? Any of the board members?
So we need a motion then to,
Take the plan under advisement.
yeah, so we shouldn't close it at this point.
If you believe you have enough information, you can close the hearing.
We could close
and take it
the
under advisement.
whatever your wishes.
Okay. So I move that we close the hearing, this particular hearing, to reduce the 3 existing lots and roadway to 1 lot.
And take the plan.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Question, sorry.
No, I'd like to make a comment. Correction, I said 11 abutters were notified. 7 abutters were notified on this specific issue.
Okay, the meeting, the hearing's closed on this issue. The next item,
It's permanent.
this is application for a special permit for a contractor's yard located in lots 3A, 4, and 5, Hiken Way, Cape Cod Engineering, for the applicant, Mr. Clower.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
Notices again, sorry. Excuse me, procedure.
Again, notices were published on July 7th, July 14th, July 21st, and 11 abutters were notified by certified request, certified mail.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I'm an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth. I represent Joseph Bushanio, the prospective buyer of the lots known as Lot 3A, 4, and 5 on Hiken Way, as well as prospective buyer of the corner lot, which is shown on your plans as the Bigelow lot on the corner of Hiken Way and Old Meeting House Road. These properties are located off of Old Meeting House, so, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. Although he is under agreement to purchase that corner lot is not part of this application. I was just stating that for the record. These lots are located off of Old Meeting House Road, and they're abutted to the south by the Midway Trap and Skeet Club, to the west and north by the Tony Andrews Farm. and they are located in the Agricultural A zoning district. As you've certainly understood, these are two related applications. The first, which we just closed, was the remerge of the lots into one lot of 4.1 acres. And then the subsequent application is this application before you now for a special permit for the use of this property as a contractor's yard. So to recap our last hearing, which was a little while ago, so we might be foggy on it, the resulting lot is 4.1 acres with frontage of 110 feet, lot area, a lot width of 376 feet. This application follows the merger, and the applicant in this case owns an existing tree and landscape business. Many of the uses that we're actually seeking for this site are by right uses, it being an agricultural zone. Those by right uses include greenhouses and tree nurseries. The reason we need a contractor's yard special permit is because you're seeking to store some equipment on the property as well as some firewood. Following receipt of the staff report, we did make some minor modifications to the plan. They're relatively hot off the press, and I wasn't able to get them over to the planning board prior to tonight's hearing. I do have some printed copies for you that I'd like to submit at this time. There's nothing substantive that's been changed, and I'll review those changes with you, but I did want to address the concerns raised by the engineering referral as well as the staff report.
Do you have anything we can show the public?
I don't, because I don't have the PDF. These copies were just dropped off. And I have the plan I can put up on the easel, but I don't have a PDF because they were dropped off to me by the engineer about 20 minutes ago.
Makes it difficult for the folks at home to see.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, through no one's fault necessarily, we didn't receive the staff report until Monday, so we had the changes made as quickly as we could, but we weren't able to get the PDF and the copy submitted. So the only changes shown in this plan from that plan are we laid out an area, a 50 by 50 area for firewood storage and a 50 by 50 area for staging area for the equipment located along the back lot line, the westerly lot line. Similarly, 4 parking spots are now shown, just laid out in that area. All of those storage areas are located behind the proposed row of screening, which would be between there and the Bigelow lot, as well as additional screening, which would be between, along the easterly edges of the property, and all of which is further down the driveway area. So those...
Excuse me. Please, you have to ask my permission to speak, and then I'll let you come up. Please don't interrupt us again. Wait till your turn, please. He has the floor.
Just for the record, though, I will just address, this here is the Bigelow lot, which is the corner lot on Hiken Way and Old Meeting House Road. In addition, we did just lay out the 30-foot setbacks to the side and rear lot line. Those are the only changes to the plan. Everything else is as shown on the plan, which is on the overhead projector. Zoning bylaw section 240-38K allows the planning board to issue a special permit for property usage as a contractor's yard. It provides certain requirements that an applicant needs to meet, which are the lot in an agricultural A zoning district must be at least 3 acres, must have a front yard setback of at least 75 feet, must have side and rear yard setbacks of 30 feet, cannot be located within a water resource protection district, and not within 300 feet of a dwelling existing as of April 1, 2000. In addition, it talks about there being no adverse impact on traffic or neighborhoods. My belief and the applicant's belief is that this location satisfies all those requirements very handily. The lot is 4.1 acres, which well exceeds the 3 required acres. All of the setbacks are met. It's not within a water resource protection district. We have set it back at least 300 feet from the nearest residence, which is Ken Andrews' home located at 356 Old Meeting House Road. In reality, all of the contractor usage is being proposed to the back portion of the lot, being the furthest from any from many residences, which again, Ken Andrews is the closest. The gentleman who spoke previously, I believe, is to the north of this, and then the Viber Lane properties are over here to the far east. Old Meeting House Road is a fairly busy thoroughway, connecting to Sandwich Road on the northern end. We think that there's very little impact on traffic for what we're proposing. As I mentioned, what the applicant is doing is he runs a tree and landscape business. His goal is not to be on this site. He's not looking to run his business on the site. He's looking to run his business elsewhere. And he'd be using some of the property for storage of firewood. He'd be using some of the property as greenhouse usage, which again is a by right use. He'd be using some of the property as a nursery, which again is a by right use, and lends itself well to the agricultural area. Further, I think the location of this is relatively ideal, located with the gun club to the south and with Tony Andrews Farm to the north and west. It's a very secluded spot, and the use that's being proposed is well in line with the surrounding properties, especially including Tony Andrews Farm. As I've mentioned, many of these uses, if not most of these uses, are in fact by right. There was a considerable amount of thought and discussion that went into the development of these plans and the proposal of the site as a contractor's yard. And I think oftentimes people hear the term contractor's yard and they get scared and they think of a boogeyman, they think of gravel pits, and they think of very unsightly things. That's not really what's being proposed here. What's being proposed here is an attractive landscaping with tree nurseries and with greenhouses and with uses that this zone is designed for. This is the agricultural zone. This is very much what this zone is designed for. The only contractor usage is the storage of some equipment on the back of the lot. Other than that, it's all a by right matter. All of this being said, I'd be glad to address any questions the board might have, and I thank you for your time.
Any questions? We'll start with John and work our way down from the outside, sorry.
Thank you. I don't see any gates on the way in, or is there a plan to have any gate?
It hadn't been discussed, but I think it's certainly something the applicant would be amenable to.
I'm not saying you have to, I'm just asking.
It hadn't been planned. A gate across the front of the driveway.
There's a chain right now, I would upgrade that to the 8 mil.
Come up and identify yourself.
Identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Joseph Pachinio, and the question was there a gate there?
Are you going to put a gate there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a chain there now, kind of rickety chain, and I would definitely upgrade it to a...
Could you show us approximately where you're going to put the gate?
Probably, we're just enough room for me to pull off the road
Okay,
for a safety issue,
So
unlock it, lock it.
so out towards Old Barnstable Road?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is kind of a procedural question. If this gets approved, because it's fairly innocuous use here, but if it gets approved as a contractor's yard, and some years down the road, the applicant sells the property with contractor yard use, does the new owner have to come back if they are going to intensify the use?
Short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions, Jim.
Yeah.
When you say storage of firewood, is the firewood that's going to be delivered there cut already, or are you going to be doing any stripping and cutting of the wood there?
I would process the firewood there.
Excuse me, every time you address this board, you need to get up and speak there. I'm sorry, it's our rules.
I would have the firewood brought in or taken off jobs and process it there in the back left corner
So,
of the property.
so you'd be bringing in logs,
Logs or pieces from tree jobs, yeah.
and then you'll be doing the processing
In the
back
back
there?
left corner, right next to the cell phone tower, kind of.
Is there going to be any mitigation at all? I mean, it is, let me explain what my concern is, because I've been through something like this, very similar to this before. The noise and the particulates that are spread all over are pretty onerous for anyone within many hundreds of feet. When you bring it in and it goes from the truck and it gets dropped, there's a tremendous amount of noise, and then when it gets sawed, cut, whatever, are you doing anything for both either the noise and/or the particulates that will be spread all over from the cutting of all that wood?
I can address some of that question, ma'am. There is significant screening being proposed from likely trees, being a tree and landscape company. Mr. Bisciano has no objection to certainly mitigating with trees. We've proposed a row of screening here, as well as screening here and here. There would likely be some screening along the back, which is shown here as the edges of clearing now. So I don't think there's any objection to fleshing that out. Beyond that, in terms of mitigation, I'm not quite sure what you'd be proposing, because
Trees are not going to mitigate either the noise or the spreading of particulates, which are carcinogenic. So many places that bring in wood will have it screened off, not just by trees, but by actual barriers, be it corrugated metal or something that protects the area as the wind blows and all that matter gets distributed elsewhere.
when you're referring to matter,
I'm talking about particulates from the cutting of the wood, getting rid of the bark.
Okay, right now, I'd really like to go back to a hearing and seeing what the applicant was. We're going to have plenty of time for a discussion amongst our board, but at a later date, I'd like to hear what they're proposing.
Well, is this information the board has?
We can ask a question, but it's going more than, I think we're going more into commenting and then questioning is what I'm saying.
No, my question is what type of,
That's fine, ask that question.
I think I did.
there hadn't been any proposed at this point.
Would you be willing? Let me put it that way. Would you be willing?
It's hard to say yes without knowing some more specifics. I think in theory, some mitigation is certainly amenable, but I think agreeing to mitigation without knowing exactly what that mitigation is not a great situation to be in. So I don't think we can unilaterally say yes here, but I think that some mitigation is certainly appropriate and amenable. What that mitigation is, I think needs to be fleshed out. Because we had proposed, our thinking had been that the screening with trees would do actually quite a bit to mitigate the noise, and as well as you use the term particulate. It's not a term that I'm overly familiar with, so I hesitate to use it. But it would certainly well screen the area as far as we had thought it through.
I'll bring it up during the discussion.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Bob?
I noticed that you've got a list of 11 vehicles. Are they going to be serviced on the site? Is there going to be fuel reserves kept on site? Anything of that nature?
I think there might be some small amount of fuel, but I don't think any significant service would be done off-site.
Any other questions, Bob?
I'm good, thanks, right now.
Jim?
Yep.
Going back to, I guess you'd call it the processing of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Cutting is one thing. Chipping is another. And I would really have concern also about the chipping. If there were going to be chipping of any kind of branches.
We're not chipping on-site.
So you're going to be bringing in then, from that answer, I'm assuming you're going to be bringing in trees that have been removed through the landscaping business that are already devoid. Essentially, they're logs.
Straight wood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing that is of concern is, and you've got all of these lists of questions, so we would have to have all of those things answered before we can really debate it. The wastewater questions, water questions, from engineering, from the
We're not proposing,
department.
I don't think we're proposing anything that would lead to significant wastewater, as there's no on-site bathrooms that are being proposed for this.
and you'll be using well water in the area.
Yeah, well,
Well
as of
water.
tonight.
Okay, let's see, there was another one on here that I had. Oh, I know. The greenhouses, when I think about landscaping, I'm wondering what the greenhouses are going to be used for, growing flowers to be used in landscape?
Largely, he's considering vegetables mostly.
Interesting, I don't think of vegetables as landscaping, I know I use them
Well,
like
yeah,
that,
some of
but-
this is probably personal use as well, personal use, and it's, I think it's a continuation of the use of the site largely as a farm usage. Part of it will be used for the contracting business, part of it's used for pleasure, I suppose.
Okay. I'm happy.
Paul?
I noticed there's a large amount of equipment going to be stored on site, and these are very big pieces of equipment. Is that going to be just stored there? They're going to be going in and out every day, or?
Some will be coming in and out, some will be staying there stored. They'll be used on an as-needed basis. So I wouldn't say that all will be coming in and out every day. I think some will be coming in and out.
There's some big dump trucks there. Some big equipment. The other question I have is, we had a similar situation before where an owner brought in large trees and were cutting the trees, which upset the neighbors greatly. This was a huge, huge facility. They brought a huge piece of equipment in, and with one process, stuck the trees, cut them, split them, and dumped them on the ground at a very high noise level. Is that the kind of operation we're talking about here?
Well, without knowing more specifics, it's hard to say, but I don't think so. I think this is a relatively small-scale operation that we're discussing. Largely what we're talking about is some trees that have been taken down and likely logged off-site and then split on-site. I don't think we're discussing bringing in large logging logging trucks or anything of that nature. What we're discussing is more, if you had a tree taken down in your yard and it was stripped on-site and then it was logged up into parcels and then brought to the site. I think that's much more in scope of what we're discussing. I don't think this is, and I say this not to certainly denigrate my client, but I don't think this is a large-scale operation. I think he runs a nice small business that he's done for many years, and he's very proud of it, and he should be. But I don't think it's a large operation in the scope that you're discussing.
So the logging's more a byproduct of the other work that's being done.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real question's here, there's no chipper listed on this.
Because there isn't a chipper.
Okay, I think that's what a lot of people are getting at there. I noticed it wasn't listed, okay. Any other questions from the board before we go to the public?
Just one more. In the back lot, what's currently there? Is that all, is there vegetation back there? Is
This
there
section
trees?
here?
Behind the lot line.
Back here?
Yeah, right there.
It's the Tony Andrews Farm property.
Yeah.
Is that clear, or is that mostly?
No, there's a real thick screen of vegetation there and along the gun club.
Yeah,
And then I believe the cell phone tower for the gun club is located in this area over here.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, members from the public, you were ready to go, sir. This is your spot. Identify yourself, please.
Okay, again, it's Mark Franciosi, reside at 385 Old Meaden House Road, and I built the house there 3.5 years ago, substantial investment. Bought that land and chose that location for a couple of reasons. One, open land, it's very tranquil, right across the street from the farm. Now I understand the town is looking to buy that as a farm preservation, which is great for any homeowners in that area who are concerned about our home values, as I. Not too sure how a special permit for a contractor yard is going to do for, one, quality of life, noise, equipment in and out, not to mention our home values. Totally changes, one, I'm hearing a few things here. One, it's a contractor yard. I hear chippers are in the equation. Yes, it is. I have pictures of 2 chippers on site now. I've seen them chip. I've seen piles of chipping. I see logs, wood being split there, which I was kind of wondering what was going on there to begin with. So a permit such as this can be expanded once it's released. Now I hear about processing, log processing. So a permit like this can be completely expanded over time. What's that do to the area? Not good. Quality of living, home value prices decrease, and not to mention, I would think it's an issue with the town. Yeah, they're making an investment, was it 4 million total, farm preservation? They want a holding area with 11 large equipment there, chippers, I have pictures of the chippers. Doesn't make any sense to me. So absolutely I oppose the situation. Thanks.
Did you submit those pictures?
I have the pictures on my phone.
Okay.
You have
You have time to submit them.
What's that?
You have time to submit them.
Mr. Chair,
How do I submit them?
Send them to the planning board along with a
Sure.
letter, whatever you,
I already sent a letter this morning as well as my neighbor. I'll be happy to send that too. I believe we sent and addressed the email to Brian.
yes, I read you, the letter was in the file, it didn't say anything about chippers.
Well, this chip is there, they've been there for a while. So, thanks.
Mr. Chair, if I can just respond to that.
Yes, you may.
Is he gonna send them in or not?
It's up to him.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to respond. This allegation was brought to my attention when I walked in tonight. My understanding is that the current owner of this property has either himself or a family member use that in terms of a contractor's yard. That's not my applicant. That's not my client. That's not what's before you tonight. So there are allegations of someone using the site currently. That's not Mr. Busciano.
So it's not on the subject property is what you're saying?
My understanding, again, this was just brought to my attention when I walked in this evening, is that it's located on this lot here. And regardless as to who's doing it, it's not the applicant.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that issue very clear. So thank you for that.
The gentleman that spoke before, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I still have a question.
Should get this guy here.
My name is Mark Hughes. Can I point up here?
Absolutely.
I live right here. So every heavy vehicle, equipment, or truck that comes out here, I have the headlights right in our house. So,
Please go back to the mic so we can hear you now,
Oh, okay.
people at home. You can point to it, but once you stand over there, no one can hear you.
so I'm right at the end of that road. So every big truck, piece of heavy equipment, all the headlights are right in my house. So that's going to be a major change in the value of my property. This Bigelow lot, that's why I was asking, did I hear you say that it's under agreement of sale?
It's not subject to this application. It's not something we're
Okay.
talking about tonight.
Okay. As far as the chipping and sawing that's going on right now, yeah, they've been doing that for a month. I think it's Tony Andrews, but I don't know for sure. And I don't mind, they do it. You know, I cut trees on my property once in a while, you know. It's not something I really mind because they're, you know, it's just part of their farming operation, I think. But if they're going to be, but what I want to say about that is, it's right up here in this corner where they're doing it, and it's just like it's on my property as far as noise. Very, you know, it's very loud, but like I say, it's not a constant thing. Now, but if we're going to have a constant thing going on, or almost daily or whatever, that's going to be a huge difference. I mean, you can hear those saws and chippers reverberating. It's a big difference. It'd be like somebody cutting down a tree in your property on a daily basis and chipping it up. So those are, and plus just the heavy equipment moving in and out of the road, you know, the noise of heavy trucks accelerating and everything. Like I said, our house is right there. So it's going to be a major financial effect to me. And I also think the houses around there are going to have the same problem. Because it's a very quiet neighborhood right now. And when there's something like that going on, everybody hears it. But when it's just somebody cutting down a tree on the property, that's a different thing, you know. But if you're doing that on a constant basis, it's going to be a major, major difference. And I did have a question about if he owns this and he's going to end up owning that, then he's going to expand it into the front. That's what I think somebody was talking about, this growing, these things growing, once you give the permit. So, yeah, that's, you know, the noise, the trucks, the headlights going right in my house. And of course, the road, you know, that, I have grandchildren that come over. Now I got heavy trucks, you know, on a more frequent basis. I'm not saying we don't get trucks up and down the road, we do, you know, on a more frequent basis. So, I guess that's all I can think of right now. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public have a comment? Yes, please step up.
Hi, my name is Matt DeWicki. I'm here tonight on behalf of my parents, who are the property owners of 329 Old Meeting House Road. We're a little down the ways, across from that. Well, to put it simply, my parents are not happy about this. The only reason they're not here right now is because they have work to deal with, so here I am. They are, as has already been mentioned, and very concerned about what this will do to property values. They drive by there every morning, they see the equipment on site, and they keep wondering, what's it for? It's an unwelcome mystery to them. And they are, to say the least, disappointed that all this stuff keeps happening. First it was a cell phone tower, now this. I submitted a letter my mom wrote last night as a complaint earlier. You guys may have it. And she took pictures, and she asked me to let you all know that this seems like a very slow invasion of industrial parks and other stuff like that into a agricultural neighborhood. And as my neighbors are probably thinking, why is this happening? We're not gonna take this lying down, so. Anyway, I'm not used to public speaking, so forgive me for stuttering a little here, but this is not what I want to see happen to the place where I grew up in, so. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Okay. Anyone else? Any?
Yes.
Please step up. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
I'm Mary Ann Hughes, and I'm at 4 Viber Lane, along with my husband. And I just have a question. Initially, it was stated that he doesn't do business here, he does it somewhere else. How does that work, I guess? Are they talking about an office somewhere else, or I'm thinking if this works out for him, that would it expand to include wherever else he is? Do you know what I mean? No.
Try again, I'm not sure I got it.
No, I think I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he doesn't do business here. He's doing it somewhere else.
Right, if he's a
Correct?
landscaper, he has clients in other locations.
So that would be considered where he does business?
That's
Okay.
where his business is,
Okay,
yeah.
I just needed a clarification.
This would kind of be like headquarters.
This would be kind of like
Yeah.
headquarters.
The special permit is required because he parks vehicles primarily. That is the guts of the situation here. He's given us, the application, you should look at it, has a list of vehicles that he wants to park there. And that's most of the reason why we're here.
Okay. And most of the reason why we're here also are those vehicles and the change they're going to make in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Thank you.
More, coming back?
Coming back. It's Mark again. I have another comment, kind of listening to some of the comments here as well. You know, the permit says contractor yard, which I oppose that in in itself. Words like industrial park, that was one of my main concerns. But when you hear the presentation today, we're not talking about holding area for equipment of wood. We're talking about greenhouses growing, again, holding large equipment and processing, and equipment in and out. That's no contractor yard. Goes way beyond that. Enough said.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I can just respond to some of the questions or concerns.
yes, you may.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. For the record, again, I'm Kevin Flower. I just want to take a moment to address some of the concerns and some of the notes I jotted down. I'm hearing a lot of concern about who might be using the property or the equipment that might be on the property. And I can't speak to who or what that equipment is, but it's not the applicant and it's not the matter that's before you this evening. Because one, it's not the subject property that we're discussing, and two, it's not the applicant that's doing it or controlling it. He will have control over the site, presumably, if all goes well. And at that point, all usage is going to be controlled by, largely, the special permit or what's allowed as a by right matter under the zoning bylaw. I've heard concerns about a chipper. We're not talking about a chipper. We're not proposing chipping on site. I've heard concerns about headlights, and we're proposing largely daylight hours of operation. We've talked about a constant basis of noise. To the extent there is any splitting of wood on site, it's not a constant matter. I asked the applicant this evening, and I said, how often do you do it? He says, I run it for about 2 to 3 weeks a year. That's the busy season of when he's splitting wood, getting ready for the upcoming season, letting it age appropriately. It's not being done on a daily or even weekly basis in most cases. I wouldn't want to restrict his ability to do that, but I don't want people thinking this is a constant drone of wood splitting happening on site, because that's very much not what's being proposed. I heard a lot of concerns about the possible expansion or growth of what's being asked for this evening. To the extent that there is any expansion, the applicant would have to come back to this board and ask to expand his special permit. To the extent any expansion happened without the allowance of this board, it'd be subject to an enforcement order by the assistant zoning enforcement officer or by the building commissioner. That's how it works. There was talk about a slow invasion of industrial uses. This isn't industrial uses. These are agricultural uses. A greenhouse isn't an allowed by right agricultural use within this district. If all we were proposing was greenhouses on these properties, we wouldn't be before you tonight, because it would be an allowed usage. The only reason we're here is the possible storage of vehicles. And that's going to be done in such a way that it's really screened from the neighbors. It's going to be in the farthest portion of the lot away from the neighbors. It's going to be butting up against Tony Andrews Farm to the west and to the gun club on the south, where no one lives. And those are the big concerns I heard. And I think that a lot of the concerns might be misplaced. And I think that there are perhaps some valid concerns, but I think we've addressed those as best we can. And I think, if the board has any remaining questions, we'd be happy to address them. If there's anything the board feels is still outstanding, we'd be happy to submit that information. But other than that, that's all.
Bob?
On any given day, are all 11 vehicles going to be moved off-site, or is it?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think most of these vehicles will be used on an as-needed basis. I think there's probably 2 or 3 vehicles that are used on a daily basis. But I think for the most part, a lot of these are specialty vehicles, and will either be, some of them might be used on-site for farm usage, for tree nursery or things of that nature, but the majority of these, I think, would be used off-site on an as-needed basis.
How many employees?
There's 4 employees at any given time.
Yes.
I have a question. This is zoned agricultural, but we're hearing from neighbors, and of course driven that road as we all have, and it has always struck me as being residential along the street. Would you call this a predominantly residential neighborhood?
I think there are pockets of residential, but being zoned agricultural doesn't prohibit there being residential uses, so they're not mutually exclusive. I think that there are certainly some residences nearby, as was evidenced by the neighbors coming forth tonight, And as evidenced by Mr. Andrews living, on the corner of the property here. That being said, this is zoned agricultural on the zoning map, and this use is an agricultural use.
I have just one further question. The town now is discussing quite an investment there for preservation, and I think the concern of the preservationists, I know some of the people who are working on that, is preserving that open character that was discussed. Could you discuss your view of the impact of this project on that character?
I'm hesitant to step into discussing the impact of this project on the town because the town's project is still in many ways theoretical. That being said, I think that what we're proposing is largely in line with what currently exists. It's in many ways an extension of the usage on the farm. Again, we're talking about tree nurseries, we're talking about some greenhouse usage, which in many ways sound like a farm usage. So I don't think that what we're proposing, again, to reuse the term, is mutually exclusive from having an open space character. We're not proposing large buildings, we're not proposing an overdevelopment of the site. In fact, I think it's in many ways an underdevelopment. I think that this is, I use the term, I said I think it's an ideal location for this, and I believe that. I think that this is a fantastic location in as much that it's an extension in many senses of the existing farm use onto this property.
Pat?
When you're talking about landscaping, it also occurs to me that there are many other things used in landscaping, such as gravel, stones. I don't see anything on this plan that indicates that there will be any kind of stone yards.
Because we're not proposing it.
Gravel. So there will be none of that.
No mulch, no mulch, and no gravel, and no.
So it will be picked up simply on an as-needed basis from wherever if it is going to be used. Okay.
Go ahead.
In addition to what Charlotte said, on the south side is I believe the Rod and Gun Club, which is also developing the Coonamessett River with great cost. So they're doing a lot of natural redevelopment there as well, in addition to what's going on north of the site.
I think that's a fantastic project they're embarking on. I've been following it, and I fully support what they're doing. So.
Yes.
Will there be any fertilizer on site for your greenhouses?
No, I have a well, I propose to grow out some nursery stock in the lot by rows of evergreens in the lot by the road. There might be a little bit to feed them, but I have a company that does all my fertilization.
And is there any mitigation to make sure that there's no outflow from that fertilizer if it rains, and how are you going to prohibit it from migrating onto the farm property?
So anytime work is done on a site, an owner has an obligation to make sure that it doesn't increase runoff onto additional sites. That being said, nursery is a by right usage in agricultural districts. So what Mr. Bujani was discussing is really what he's envisioning for, not the subject of this application. What we're discussing is these lots here. So I don't think there's been much thought given at this point to mitigation for the growth. That being said, as that's developed, it has to be developed in a way that it doesn't increase runoff onto any adjoining sites.
The question, I think the problem is the original plan didn't show the 30-foot setbacks. Now, with these setbacks, none of these operations you're talking gonna happen within that setback, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so there is a 30-foot setback around the entire process. And see, we didn't all see that until it's in front of us right now. Yes, sorry, Charlotte.
I'm curious about your answers to the water supply questions that were raised here. You're planning to have greenhouses, you're going to do some planting. If you're planting, you're going to have to water them. If you're running greenhouses, you're going to have to water. There's a question about employee waste. I wonder what your answers are to those.
Just to help, I might interject just a moment, Mr. Chairman, to help the board in your questioning, line of questioning. The by right nursery use is shown on the plan. I'm going to ask the applicant to simply remove them. And it shouldn't really concern the board. They're used allowed as a matter of right. So my
Right,
guidance.
so they shouldn't even be shown on the plan, is what you're saying.
So let's just stick to what's the applicant's about. He wants to store vehicles.
On to our next discussion, I think the board should familiarize themselves with all the uses that are by right. Okay, because I
Thank
think we're missing some things here. Go ahead, Pat.
I just wanted to say one thing. It's sort of an inconvenient truth. I mean, I empathize with you all who purchased property, built a home. The inconvenient truth is that if any of you had researched what the zone was and what was allowed, you may not have built there. Because it's unfortunate that you can build homes in an agricultural area, but you can't do agricultural use in a residential area. And
This is a hearing, is that a question there?
no, I
Or
was
a
just,
statement?
it was a statement of fact.
Absolutely.
Just for the board's guidance, you're at the hearing phase, and if there are any further questions.
We'll have plenty of time for
there's plenty of time to
statements
respond.
Okay.
during our discussion, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Brian always told me to grab my ear and listen. We're supposed to be just listening, not talking. That's how he trained me.
I have a great mental image of Brian dragging you around by the ear right now, though.
Part of the problem here, of our understanding, is that this really does show more nursery. What it does not show is the proposed area for storage of the vehicles. And I think that should be required on this plan, exactly where the vehicles are planning to be stored.
So on the plan I did submit this evening, there is it's called a staging area.
Oh,
And they're all going to be parked in that one spot?
That's the thought. I mean, you know, if that needs to be modified slightly, we're happy to do it, but the intent is to have that as the
That's
staging
what we
area.
wanted to hear.
okay, I don't think of staging area as being vehicle storage, sorry. So I didn't interpret it in that manner. I
Poetic
think
license.
of a staging area as being something where you're setting up for a project. So I think I would prefer that that is relabeled so that there is no confusion.
Vehicle parking?
That be vehicle parking, vehicle storage, however you want to do it, so that definitively has to do. And if you're going to be doing staging for jobs, this is what I think of as setting up for a job.
We wouldn't be staging for jobs in that site. That site was designed for the storage of the vehicles.
Okay, then relabel it, please.
Happy to do so.
Yes, Pam?
Will those vehicles be garaged, or will they just be out?
They'll be out. They're largely, you know, equipment, farm equipment and vehicles that are designed to be exposed in many ways.
So, take this under advisement?
No, I recommend the board continue this hearing till Tuesday, August 8th? Tuesday the 8th?
Okay.
Calendar, please? Just to make sure.
So it'll continue, be open for public comment?
Yes, I asked, my recommendation to the board is to continue the hearing in its entirety to Tuesday, August the 8th, at 6:30 here in the town hall.
So moved. Use your words, Brian.
John?
Just two final for myself, please. When you come back, we have the PDF that will show us what we're seeing here so that everyone can see that. And also, could you explain again what that dotted line is for, what it represents?
Former lot line?
This dotted line?
That dotted line right there, yes.
That's a 300-foot setback to the residence.
So it's maybe close to 400 feet from Old Meeting House Road. What happens in front of that dotted line and what happens behind the dotted line?
There is no contractor use proposed in front of the dotted line.
Or allowed, is there?
No, but we're also not proposing it. In
Right.
fact, the only contractor usage we're proposing is located about as far from the residence as can be on the lot. This would be the driveway area here.
And the overall length of the property is, what, is it 700 feet or so?
451 plus 259, 279, so
Over 700 feet?
730 feet, give or take.
Okay. But you'll show that on the PDF when you come back.
Yeah, well, the PDF will be the plan that was delivered to you this afternoon with some minor relabeling as requested. But it'll be largely the plan that was
Okay.
this afternoon.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, so there's a motion in place.
You need a second.
We need a second.
Second.
If I could just clarify before, so the board is looking for us for the relabeled plan. Is there anything else that the board is looking for from the applicant prior to the hearing?
You would more than likely going to want the cubic yards of logs to be stored. You want a more complete list of equipment. A splitter's not on your list. There's no indication whether or not the paving will be there for the parking. There's a host of things I'd like to discuss with the applicant, and I won't bind the board at this point. You've continued the hearing in its entirety to August the 8th. But there are certain things we need to discuss with the applicant.
Yeah, and I don't think the board even had time to review the plan that you gave us today.
Certainly.
Okay, so we're, motion to continue?
I'll make a comment.
Again?
As an engineer,
I'm sorry.
I always comment on the locust plan.
Right, we have a motion on the table and a second. We're the time for
I asked
comments.
if I can make a comment.
Okay,
Go ahead, vote on it.
we'll have plenty of discussion. Listen, so you know,
Well, he's looking for changes, and I think the locust plan is terrible from an engineering perspective, and I know where the site is, but you couldn't find it from the locust plan. And I always tell the engineering people in town to do a better job on it.
Good.
I have trouble with it too.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Let's continue.
Aye.
Does the board want to take a view? Does the board want to take a view of the site?
That might be advisable, Brian.
That's a good idea.
It's your typical, I'm sorry, it's your policy to vote if in fact you want to go as a quorum. Otherwise, I can discuss with the board members, you should probably visit the site. It's up to the board.
Site plan, I mean, go to an on-site.
So does the board, the question is,
You
does
said
the
yes.
board want to go together
Yes.
as a
board
site
to view the
visit,
site.
as a whole?
We got one yes?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Brian, could you schedule that?
I'll discuss it with Attorney Pyle.
Be in your
At your
inbox.
beck and call, Brian. I'll be at your beck and call for that.
Okay,
Okay, so noted.
so it's continued.
So it's continued to Tuesday, August the 8th. 6:30 here.
With a site visit in between.
The site visit
You'll do
here.
a site visit posted as an open meeting, but not part of the site.
Thank you very much.
It seems residential.
it's a combination.
It is a combination, but and the date that that date went there, they couldn't do this. See
Here it
this?
is.
They're going to put it within 300 feet. This says within 500 feet of the dwelling existing, and that's
We'll
in
discuss that.
2000. Yeah, so that's 17 years ago. This is a very, supposing we'd already done our update, we would have been very keyed into that.
Okay, folks, we're still having our meeting here,
over here.
okay? Now we're moving on.
Moving on to
Planning board
transfer.
discussion. First thing on the agenda is transfer of development rights.
And hopefully, you have in your package copies of Montgomery County in Maryland and Seattle, Washington's bylaw that cites the purposes. If you don't, then it's my, I missed that. So, because at our last meeting, we were talking about,
We need
setting the purpose. It's sort of important. I think did I email those things to the board? I think I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I can't remember.
I'm not here, but they will email.
Okay, so, take a look at those. Obviously, I don't have them here tonight, but take a look at those. Montgomery County in Maryland has probably the #1 TDR success in the country. better than the Pine Barrens and better than Seattle. Take a look at their purposes and how they do it there. They're a big county, they have, hundreds of staff people, they have the ability to do a bank and whatnot. But they're also the case study on the state's webpage, together with us, and the Seattle, Washington example. Typically speaking, the purposes are to allow greater density, less density. But we can continue that discussion on another night. I apologize for not having that material here tonight for the board. But take a look at it. I think also the Cape Cod Commission model bylaw had a purpose section too. So just keep those in mind about what it is we're thinking about doing. That's all.
I have a question on the purpose, at least what my understanding is, that in general, we're not changing the total density or build out, we're moving it from one place to another.
And that's a fundamental change from the current bylaw.
Right, that's...
The current bylaw granted a density bonuses or increases up to 40%. Right. This is simply migrating development from one area that is less, so it's less detriment.
Right.
But there's no real, it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Right. Right. We're just moving it down the checkerboard.
Unless we think there should be a bonus.
Unless there are those extraordinary circumstances and great public benefit, such as you see in your planned residential development bylaw, you do allow for a density bonus.
Right.
At your discretion, not by right. When it's a really good plan.
When they create a lot of open space, link it up with other open spaces and the benefits everybody in the town, then we consider a bonus.
Then you, the planning board,
Considers.
consider it.
No, it doesn't, they don't get it, we have to consider it.
It's not,
That's
not formula driven.
Come on, by right.
No.
And the board has done that in the past.
You want something
You've actually
transferred,
granted density bonuses for planned residential developments that have been really good and linked up open space and had public access and had those incentives. So that's, I think, the better way to go, unless there's some formula out there that's, so clear cut, you can incorporate it, but usually it's a discretionary thing by the board. And we'll continue, hopefully, this discussion, maybe even a further draft. I'll put a purpose draft together for our next discussion, instead of just bringing this stuff in for August 8th.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Brian, you said it was a zero-sum game. If you move the development rights from one area and you move it to another, and you could have higher density or something else, it wouldn't necessarily be a zero-sum game.
The number of units doesn't change. If I have 100 units spread out over 10 acres, or I have
So
100
you're
units.
saying if you move it there, you can't increase the number of units if it's allowed in that particular new site.
So you're moving it down the chessboard.
I think, Paul, the idea is to restrict it from one site and move it to another.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that, but if you're allowed to do something different at the new site, you might increase density, you might increase the number of housing.
On
So
the
it
other
wouldn't
side,
necessarily be a zero-sum game.
For that
Granted.
particular lot.
Right. So we need to, when we work on this, the first thing we really need to do is talk about why are we doing, what's the purpose of this bylaw? We're just not arbitrarily saying we want to transfer development rights. We've got to spell right out why we're doing it. And that's the question, Paul, we'll have to answer at that time.
That's important.
I think it's real important. So we're going to get more information and have a more detailed discussion on this another night?
right, take a look at the ones I sent you. I think there's 3. I'll draft something for the 8th. And make sure no moss.
The only thing I'd say is this issue has come up 10 times in the local comprehensive plan meeting. And it's a tool we don't have, and we always felt, at least when I was involved in it, that we needed the tool of some kind, like this, and that's one of the reasons why I keep bringing it up, but we need some fine tuning on it as well.
And my concern when we were bringing it up at the comprehensive plan is focusing on trying to decrease the density along the shorelines, which are vulnerable, and bring that in, so we won't get much bonus there, because you've got individual house lots, and that's a concern, because we have mostly individual house lots, as was pointed out at the joint meeting last night. So the trick is going to be able to get any density bonus.
It's policy call? Right.
I mean, if somebody has a 5-acre parcel that they could put 20 units on, and they transfer those rights to a 2.5-acre parcel, but still keep the density, I think that's a win situation. I mean, it's still the same number of units, but just in a smaller area.
Okay. That's just a discussion, we can go on. The conversion bylaw, Charlotte, you sent me an email questioning this, and
I did, and I took your
expound
answer
upon that
to...
question now to everybody.
Yeah, my question to Jim was, well, this seems to be really part of thinking about multifamily housing, and Pam and I are kind of pointed, I guess was your word last night, we're points, on multifamily housing, and I wondered if they should be considered all together. Your answer was, the report said, well, this is low-hanging fruit, maybe we should just go ahead and do it anyway, and I've been advised by that.
Okay, but I also suggest we actually have a conversion bylaw
Right.
in place, and we're talking about making some changes to
Changes,
it.
right.
And doing the multifamily. I see them as two distinct recommendation acts, and that was what my
Right.
response to you. So you're comfortable now with that?
I am, and I went back and reread the thing, and I saw what your point was.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
So at your last meeting, the board asked me to come up with some more information about the current conversion bylaw, and I jokingly at that time said, yes, I'm sure I will be able to do it, and I was turned to Corey, and I'll turn to Melinda and get it done, and they certainly did. So I have that information, but I didn't do any work. So right now, for the conversion bylaw, since 2002, you have the 18 approvals. There were 3 denials. There are no square footage, there's no square footage indicated in any of the ZBA decisions. It's just number of units. We would have to go to the ASPUB or the assessor's database, which isn't always the best thing, to get an idea of the square footages. And I think we'll probably do that, at least get an idea, if you want to have in the back of your minds, you know, what they may be.
I can relate for one. I'm familiar with one. It was a single-family home. The house wasn't even 2,000 square feet. It was probably 1,800. It was converted to 4 one-bedrooms. And it works, but
we'll try to get. We'll
so
work
it's all over the place, right?
We'll work a bit on that. Seeing it's only 18 sites, we might be able to get the field cards or the building permits themselves.
Right.
And just go right to the building permits and get that information. But it wasn't readily available in those decisions. We have not heard back from the Board of Health. I know their staff is aware of your question, and I will give them a little bit more time to research their records to indicate whether or not they have required any upgrades to the septic system with regards to, say, a double tank.
The double tank requirement that seems to be focused solely on the accessory apartment bylaw.
Right. So we haven't heard back from them at this time, and by your next meeting, August 8th, I hope to have a little bit more definitive information. If not, we'll look it up ourselves. Right. So that's the quick and dirty update of the information you were looking for from the last meeting. We'll have more detail at your August 8th meeting.
Oh, and the more detail, because it was on the number that had been declined and the reason why, just to know how they're thinking.
What we want to do is get you the copies of those decisions. You can actually read them. There's only 3. That's our plan. You probably get those as emails.
Yeah. And the question I had was answered the last time. I just wanted, the date of 1980 wasn't an arbitrary date. That's the date they passed the bylaw. So well, this is now quite a few years later, so we might want to consider changing the date. Okay, because at that time, they said, okay, everything that's on the ground as of this date is eligible. So I'm just wondering, do we need to have discussion about that, see if we want to revise that date.
Whether we just say that something has to be on the ground at least so many
Whatever,
years.
but I just want, that's a discussion we're going to have on the date as well.
Yeah, these dates go stale.
Yeah.
Things we did back in 1995 on the TDR bylaw are now 22 years ago. So I
Town
tried.
demographics have changed a lot.
So, yeah, so I try to stay away from that and say, like we say, give it on the ground for 5 years. That way it travels in time. But we can talk about that.
So they have to maybe create it and then decide to change it later, not build it specifically to.
You have to have had an occupancy permit for your use for, say, 5 years. So you're not just building it on speculation. You actually want to convert it or whatnot. Again, we go back to the purpose. The purpose in 1980 was to allow these bigger, older homes on Palmer Avenue to convert to multifamily. Everybody but people on Palmer Avenue did it. So it really goes back again to the purpose section.
And I would encourage the board members to go out on their own and actually drive by a few of these places and see them. It's a good idea. I'm familiar with them because of my business. I bump into them all the time. But if you haven't seen them, I would suggest that you do it. The most visible one to me is, you can't hardly tell, it's a 4-unit property on Clinton Avenue, the big yellow house. And it's,
Just drove by it, actually. and-
I have some friends that live in it, I've, shown the apartments there, seems to work. So that's what I want everyone to see, so we can be comfortable whether we want to take that forward or not. Okay?
Okay, so we'll have some more for you at your next meeting.
I guess this means LPC.
Well, what you got last night at the joint meeting on the transportation element, we had a meeting with Ray Jack, and that is our first foray into the review of an element with people who are concerned with it. And what I would ask you to do is to please review that. You'll see the changes in italics, and see whether you see anything else that should be changed or added to it. The last action item is brand new. Christiana Collins brought that up. So our public added new to the action items. And this is what we are looking for. Ray made some comments, and there was a comment by the selectman about requiring low-emission vehicles for any contractors, and Ray said, no, 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 and gave us the reason why we should not be requiring it. So these are the sorts of inputs that I'd be looking from the planning board, and I'm also looking for those from the selectmen, and then we'll take them back to our committee, go over that, and hopefully this will be completed, and the changes will be made on the town website to the transportation element. We're going to meet again with Ray. Most likely it's going to be the very last of September because August has been an impossibility. There were going to be a total of 4 elements that we're meeting with him on. And I'm not sure which one, or if we can clear up all 3 of them and go through the remaining 3. And then the same thing will happen. We'll bring them back to the planning board with any of the changes that Ray says, okay, we've completed these, or these need to be changed, or we get anybody participating, which would be really nice if we did, at these meetings to say you need to look at these other things too as action items. That is our plan for continuing to make that LCP, the Local Comprehensive Plan, live onward. Anybody else? Bob?
No, I think that's...
Okay, Pam? No? Okay.
I have a general question, just a question about the LCP. And it comes out of our discussion last night when people were trying to talk about transportation or talk about economic development or talk about the general improvement and vision for the town. And there was a comment in the Collins report about a lack of a vision. somehow, so I assume we're trying to respond to that in some way. And sometimes that's addressed by measurable goals that make it easier to evaluate or discuss something.
I think I tried to point out in my comments on the Collins report that it was severely lacking.
But they didn't even read the local comprehensive
No,
plan.
they had no idea, I
Right,
think,
and
of
I
its
have read the local
existence.
comprehensive plan, and I'm not attempting to criticize it at all,
Mhm.
because I didn't react to it as they did.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
and
is that
that
right?
is,
But-
we were assigned that task by the selectmen to create that vision for the future. In fact, the Cape Cod Commission required that the comprehensive plan be reviewed every 5 years. Well, what we did with this last one is it took a little bit longer than that, because the last one was, what was it, Brian, 2005 that it was completed? And I have been working on that for multiple years, and these little committees just kind of would dissolve and not complete it. So when the selectmen gave the task to the planning board, it finally, with the subcommittee, and mostly with Marlene's help, and then Corey got involved in it towards the very end of the process, it finally got done. We took a whole different look at this whole thing. And we decided we didn't like the way the prior versions of the comprehensive plan were done. The commission had a formula for it, which my understanding is not many towns are complying with that formula that they had because it does not fit their needs. So our decision at that point was to do what we as a town needed, and we structured it in that manner. We tried to make it much more readily changeable so that town meeting only had to vote the goal and the policies. The narrative, introduction to each element, if you will, could be changed at will as time goes on. And the action items can be changed at will as they are completed and additional needs are identified. Does that help you?
Yes, and I think the new format is much clearer,
Okay.
more informative, would lead to greater effect because more people would read it and remember it, and so forth. My only comment on it is benchmarks or measurable goals would be a good addition.
In a way, there are measurable goals which we are not, I guess you would say, paying really careful attention to, and those measurable goals are the action items. We put time frames on those. But it would have to take, I think the time frames are more pie in the sky, and it's more of a guideline as to which should be done first. And so they're measurable by completion. Some of those goals, some of those action items will continue for a very long time because our horizon was 50 to 100 years. So the Collins report that said we didn't have a vision, they're wrong. That was the vision. Now, the selectmen also want to pull in at least once a year public visioning meetings, and I think this is wonderful. I did suggest that they use the comprehensive plan and its elements as a basis because it's always easier when you do have something that the public and others can bat against, if you will. So that you just don't sit there and say, okay, what are your comments? You somewhat direct them.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for asking.
Any more local comprehensive plan discussion for tonight? I'm sure we'll have plenty going forward. General correspondence. We had, there was specific correspondence I encourage you all to make sure you read in the file about some of the things that are on, if you haven't read them, please, as the meetings, the continuations, there's some stuff that should be read.
We'll get that letter over to Mike Kasparian that you signed.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, and yeah, that's,
Get that up.
yes,
We're,
we're,
David Stearns.
right, we're,
Plaza.
we're having the stakeholders meeting, and we're going to have plenty of public meetings, which you'll all be invited to come to, and the public will be able to come to, but we wanted to have one meeting that we really just try to talk to the people that own the property first. And, that's what this event is. We'll have several, and you're welcome to come, but I just wanted to say the goal of this one is to hopefully get some of the property owners
Yeah.
to come to a meeting.
What we don't.
As long as you go door to door, hand out the invitations.
We're gonna have to, I think.
What we don't want to see is a public forum and discussion about property that they don't own.
Right.
You know, people wanting to do something with property they don't own.
We'll have the opportunity to talk about that after we
Yeah.
talk to the owners
That's
first.
why-
I mean, I think it's
that's why
important to,
I firmly believe that the owners have to be the first one.
First.
Amongst themselves.
but everybody talks in the end,
Yeah.
everybody.
And everybody, after they're informed and given some information on what we're thinking, then we go forward with the public.
Okay. Future agenda items. Paul?
We had an interesting meeting last night with the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Perhaps we should put on the agenda a discussion of that meeting. What we expected, what we found out, what the outcomes are, what we should do the next time we have a meeting. But we might want to have a discussion amongst ourselves on what really transpired last night. I think a lot went on, but it might be worthwhile having an open discussion of our board on what these meetings constitute and how we can make them more effective and what kind of feedback do we get.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
So, yeah, it's a good, so a discussion on future agendas for joint meeting, is that what?
And the
you-
effectiveness
Well,
of the
no,
one we
to
just had.
And the
discuss,
effectiveness of
to
the-
discuss
Of the
amongst
meeting.
ourselves about what we thought about the meeting, too.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I have another one.
Go ahead.
The status of the bylaws. We're going to get the outline and so forth. We're going to talk about the bylaws. I think we're going to put that on the agenda all the time. I think we need to do that.
You'll have that at your 8th meeting, but
Next meeting,
you want it
yeah.
as a standard item on your...
And it would be helpful to have committee reports too. For example, we just finished a meeting on the Coastal Resiliency Committee shortly before this meeting started. And it might be helpful to have feedback on what's going on with that committee, because there's a lot of interest, particularly last night, and the board here has interest in that too.
Should we just have that as a regular agenda item, committee reports, and then if there is a committee report, someone can give it.
Right.
If not, we pass on it?
Good idea.
I don't know.
That's a novel idea.
Kind
You
of
bring
like
that
a
up every
public
so
comment.
often and
Talk about-
it drops off.
Well, it could be if you don't want to take up a great deal of time with committee reports, because they can be time-consuming. They could be submitted on paper, and we can read them in advance.
They generally aren't really time-consuming, Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Well, sometimes there's nothing to report.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
in which case there's no report.
Pat?
Bob started the conversation by sending out notes on the bikeways, the extension of the bike path to Bourne, and I'd like to bring that up as to a definitive letter that can be sent to the people who need to see our thoughts on this. Bob, are you going to plan on taking some more stabs at that letter?
Yeah,
or
I
what?
will. I will.
Okay.
This is still a draft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can bring it in at our next meeting and hopefully vote on it. Because I don't know what the scheduled time is for a decision by Bourne, but it seems to me that time is moving on and we should decide who we wanted to have these comments. So I think it'd be worthwhile to bring that up.
Okay.
Okay.
Or not, if we decide we
Yeah.
don't want to do anything about it,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And we might want to have something locked and loaded.
Mhm.
You know, if we can decide on it, and then maybe decide on when it is the most appropriate time for it to be sent.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to debrief the joint meeting of 7/24, you want an update on zoning bylaw, committee reports, and the bikeway extension. Okay.
And that completes our agenda.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Jim?